The call came at 9:47 a.m. I was sitting in my truck outside the county courthouse, divorce papers on the passenger seat where my wife used to sit. 42 years gone. The house, the savings, Diane got it all. My lawyer's voice cut through the wind, rattling the doors. Tom, she's at the clinic. Right now. The fertility clinic. You need to move. I knew what that meant. The twins, my daughter Sarah's embryos, stored since before the pills took her. Diane had custody now. Court gave it to her yesterday. I floored it. 30 miles through black ice and blowing snow. The old Ford shuddered but held. My hands were white on the wheel. When I pulled into the parking lot, I saw her Mercedes. Vanity plate, Diane B. I was running before the engine stopped. The automatic doors whooshed open. I tracked snow across the tile, my boots squeaking on the floor. A security guard stepped in front of me before I made it 10 feet. Sir, you need to check in. My wife, ex-wife, she's here. I need to. His hand was on my elbow. Not rough, but firm. Sir, please. Check in at the desk. The receptionist wouldn't look at me. Young woman, maybe 25, eyes on her computer screen like it was the most important thing in the world. I'm looking for Diane Brennan. She came in about, I can't give out patient information, sir. Privacy laws. I'm not asking about a patient. I'm asking about, sir. Her eyes flicked to the security guard. Please have a seat. The waiting room smelled like hand sanitizer. Sharp, medicinal, my coat was dripping snowmelt onto the chair. 3 other people sat scattered around, pretending not to watch. A young couple holding hands. An older woman with a magazine she wasn't reading. I sat because I didn't know what else to do. The guard stood by the desk, radio crackling on his hip. 40 minutes, that's how long I waited. Long enough for the snow on my boots to melt into puddles. Long enough for my hands to stop shaking. Long enough to imagine every terrible thing Diane could be doing back in those hallways where I wasn't allowed. Then the back door opened. She came through like she owned the place. Coat buttoned, purse on her shoulder, phone in her hand. Her hair was perfect. It was always perfect. Even when she was destroying everything, she looked put together. She saw me. For just a second, something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, or satisfaction. Hard to tell with Diane. Then it was gone, replaced by that blank look she'd perfected over 42 years of marriage. She walked straight toward me. I stood. My legs felt wooden. Diane, what did you— Too late, Tom. Her voice was quiet, controlled, the way she talked to waiters when they got her order wrong. It's done. What's done? What did you do? What the court gave me the right to do. She walked past me. Didn't even slow down. Just walked past like I was furniture, like I was nothing. I tried to follow. The security guard stepped in front of me again. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to calm down. I am calm, but my voice was too loud. The young couple was staring now. Sir, I just need to know what happened. Those are my voice cracked. Those are my grandchildren. The receptionist finally looked at me. For just a second, I saw something in her eyes. Pity, maybe, or discomfort. Then she looked away. I'm sorry, sir. We can't discuss— I know, privacy laws. I sat back down because standing took too much energy. The automatic doors whooshed again. I didn't look up. Didn't want to see Diane's Mercedes pulling away. I sat there for another hour, maybe 2. I don't remember. The receptionist kept glancing at me. The security guard stayed close. Eventually, a woman in a pantsuit came out from the back. Mr. Brennan? I looked up. I'm Margaret Chen, patient advocate. She handed me a card. I think you should go home now. I need to know. I can't tell you anything here. She glanced at the receptionist, then back at me. But that's my card. There's a number on the back. Ethics board review. I took the card. Didn't understand what she was telling me, but I took it. Go home, Mr. Brennan, please. And I walked out to the parking lot. The snow had stopped. Everything was white and quiet. My truck looked small and old next to the empty spaces where the other cars had been. I got in, started the engine, sat there while it warmed up. The twins were gone. I knew it. Diane had done what she came to do, whatever that was. Termination, probably. Sarah would never forgive me. Hell, I'd never forgive myself. I should have been faster, should have known Diane would do this. 42 years, and I still didn't see it coming. The card was in my hand. Margaret Chen, patient advocate. I turned it over, on the back in pen. Call me, it's important. I drove home in a fog. Don't remember much of the drive. Black ice, white snow, gray sky. My neighbor Hank's porch light was on when I pulled into the driveway. His light was always on, keeping watch, maybe, or just keeping the dark back. I sat in the truck for a long time, the engine ticking as it cooled, my breath fogging the windshield. Finally got out, walked to the door. The house was cold inside. I'd turned the heat down to save money after Diane got the settlement. 62 degrees. Cold enough to see your breath if you stood still long enough. I sat at the kitchen table. still in my coat, Margaret Chin's card in front of me. The coffee pot was still half full from this morning. I poured a cup. It was cold and bitter, but I drank it anyway. "It's done," she'd said. I believed her. I called Margaret Chin at 11 that night. Couldn't sleep, couldn't think. Just kept staring at that card under the kitchen light. She answered on the third ring. "Mr. Brennan? You said to call." I did. A pause. Background noise, like she was moving to another room. "I can't tell you details over the phone, patient privacy, but I can tell you this. Request your records, all of them, and file for an ethics board review." "I don't understand." I couldn't say it. "The twins. Are they—" "Request the records, Mr. Brennan. I've done what I can." She hung up. I sat there holding the phone. The house was too quiet. No TV, no radio. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the tick of the clock Beth bought at a yard sale 30 years ago. I started making calls. Left messages for 3 different lawyers. Nobody answered at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. By midnight, I'd found the clinic's website. Submitted a records request. 72 hours for processing. 72 hours. 3 days of not knowing. I made a pot of coffee. Sat at the table with a legal pad trying to work out what Diane had done. Termination made sense. Quick, final, make sure I never got to see those babies. But why would Margaret tell me to request records if they were just gone? The coffee went cold. I made another pot. At 3 a.m., I called Sarah's rehab facility. Got a recording. "If this is an emergency, press 1. I pressed 1. A tired voice answered. "My daughter's a patient there. Sarah Brennan, I need—" "Sir, it's 3 in the morning. Unless this is a medical emergency?" Her mother visited her. I need to know what she told her. "I can't discuss." "I know. Privacy." I hung up. The sun came up. I was still at the table. My eyes felt like sandpaper. 2 days later, the envelope came. Thick manila folder, clinic logo on the front. My hands shook opening it. Medical consent forms, pages of them, legal language that might as well have been Chinese. I spread them across the table, trying to make sense of it. Then I saw it. Transfer of embryonic material to Advanced Fertility Solutions, Colorado. Transfer, not termination. I read it again. And again. They weren't dead. The twins weren't dead, but they were in Colorado. 3 states away. I kept reading. Found another form. Termination of grandparent custody petition pathway. State of Indiana. My stomach dropped. Diane hadn't killed them. She'd made sure I could never have them. There were more forms. Consent for transfer. Waiver of Indiana custody rights. Authorization for out-of-state storage. All signed by Diane Brennan as court-appointed guardian of embryonic material. I found the timestamp. January 12th, 10:15 a.m. I pulled out my divorce decree, checked the date, January 12th. My final divorce hearing started at 10 a.m., lasted 2 hours. She'd timed it. Waited until I was sitting in court 40 miles away while she signed papers that would erase me from my grandchildren's lives. I called the first lawyer who'd returned my message. "Mr. Brennan, I understand you're upset, but what your ex-wife did was legal. Embryos are considered property under Indiana law. The court gave her guardianship. She exercised that authority. She moved them out of state on purpose during my court hearing. That's unfortunate timing, but not illegal. So there's nothing—" "I'm sorry. If she'd acted within her legal rights, there's no basis for—" I hung up. Called the second lawyer. Same answer. Third lawyer didn't even call back. I sat at the table, reading the forms over and over. Legal language that added up to one simple truth. I didn't exist. Not in Colorado. Not in the eyes of the law. Sarah's power of attorney was in there too. Dated 3 years ago, during one of her relapses. She'd signed medical guardianship over to her mother. Probably didn't even remember doing it. Diane had used Sarah's addiction, used the court system, used the exact moment I was trapped in a courtroom to make sure I'd never have standing. Not termination. Erasure. Worse somehow. The twins were alive, but I was dead to them. My phone rang. Unknown number. "Brennan, this is Carol from Mountain View Recovery Center. I'm calling about your inquiry from Tuesday on the Sarah's rehab." "Yes? I can't discuss specifics, but I wanted you to know your ex-wife did visit Sarah last week. We thought you should be aware." "What did she tell her?" "I can't discuss patient conversations, but Mr. Brennan, Sarah's been doing really well. 90 days next week. We'd hate to see anything disrupt that." "What does that mean?" "It means your ex-wife told Sarah the babies had been taken care of." Sarah seemed relieved. She thinks they've been placed with a good family. The room tilted. She thinks they were adopted? I've said too much already, but yes, that's my understanding. They weren't adopted. They were moved to Colorado, so I can't— My voice broke. "So Sarah can't have them either." Silence on the other end. "I'm sorry, Mr. Brennan. I thought you should know." She hung up. I sat there as the afternoon light faded. Didn't turn on the lights, just sat in the growing dark with papers spread across the table like wreckage. Diane had gotten to Sarah first, planted the lie before I even knew what was happening. My daughter thought those babies were safe somewhere, with some nice family. She probably slept better than she had in years, and I couldn't tell her the truth. Couldn't risk her sobriety. Couldn't reach her anyway. No phone calls for another week. Facility rules. 42 years I'd lived in this house. Raised Sarah here. Buried my grief here when Beth passed. Now it belonged to lawyers in spite. I looked at the documents again. There, in small print, transfer completed January 12th, 10:47 a.m. While I was sitting in a courtroom, waiting for a judge to tell me how much of my life I'd lost, Diane was erasing what was left. She hadn't just won. She'd salted the earth. My neighbor's truck pulled into his driveway. Hank. Home from the diner, probably. His porch light came on. Same as every night. I didn't have the energy to turn on my own. I didn't answer the door the next day. Or the day after that. The snow kept falling, piled up on the driveway, on the truck, on the porch steps. I watched it from his kitchen window. White covering everything. Quiet. Hank knocked Tuesday morning. I heard his truck pull up, heard his boots on the porch. 3 solid knocks. I didn't move from the table. He knocked again. Tom, you in there? I was, but I wasn't going to answer. His truck started up after a minute, drove away. An hour later, the sound of a shovel on concrete. I looked out. Hank was clearing my driveway. Hadn't asked. Just did it. Took him 40 minutes in the cold. When he finished, he knocked again. I still didn't answer. Wednesday, a casserole appeared on the porch. One of the church ladies, probably. Tuna noodle in a glass dish with aluminum foil on top. I brought it in after dark. Put it in the fridge. Didn't eat it. Thursday, another casserole. This one had a note. Praying for you, Tom. Linda's Bible study group. Beth used to be in that group before the cancer. I left that one on the porch. The coffee pot stayed on. I kept making pots, but they'd go cold before I'd finish a cup. The kitchen table was still covered in documents. I'd read them, then read them again, looking for something I'd missed, some loophole. Some way back in, there wasn't one. No legal standing in jurisdiction. That phrase was on 3 different forms, like they wanted to make sure I understood. You don't exist, you don't matter, you're nobody. I'd lost weight. Could tell by how my jeans hung on my hips. Had to tighten my belt an extra notch. Didn't matter. Wasn't hungry anyway. Friday night. Or maybe it was Saturday. Hard to tell when you don't leave the house. 3 a.m., I walked out onto the porch. No coat, just the flannel shirt I'd been wearing for 3 days. The cold bit through the fabric, but I couldn't feel it. Sat on the porch swing Beth and I had hung 20 years ago. The chains creaked. The neighborhood was silent. Snow muffling everything. No cars, no dogs barking. Just the creak of the swing and my breath fogging in the air. Hank's porch light flicked on. I kept swinging. 5 minutes later, his front door opened. He came across the yard in his coat and work boots, carrying 2 mugs. Steam rising in the cold. He didn't ask permission, just sat down beside me on the swing, handed me a mug. Coffee, hot and black. We sat there, the swing creaking, both of us staring at the snow. Cold enough for you? Hank said finally. Don't feel it. That's what worries me. More silence. I held the mug. The heat burned my hands, but I didn't let go. You know, Hank said, when Linda died, you sat with me for 3 weeks. Remember that? I did. Hank's wife. Breast cancer, same as Beth. They'd gone through treatment together. Beth lasted 2 years longer. You didn't say much, Hank continued. Just showed up, fixed my sink, helped me clean out her closet, brought me that terrible chili you make. It's not terrible. It's terrible. First time I'd almost smiled in a week. But you showed up. Every day, so I'm showing up. The coffee was good, strong. I took a sip. She erased me, Hank. I know. Made it so I don't exist. Legally, the twins, Sarah's babies, they're alive, but I can't. I'm nobody to them. Just some old man in Indiana. Hank nodded, took a drink of his coffee. Lost my son, he said quietly. Jimmy, after he came back from Iraq, you remember? I did. Jimmy Kowalski, good kid. Came home with things in his head he couldn't shake. Hank found him in the garage. I couldn't save him, Hank said. He quit talking to me, quit talking to everybody, just disappeared inside of himself. By the time I realized how bad it was, he was gone. The swing creaked. So when I see you disappearing, Hank said, when I see you going quiet, not answering the door, sitting out here in January without a damn coat, his voice got rough. I'm showing up, whether you like it or not. I held the mug tighter. The burn felt real. First thing that had felt real in days. Don't know what to do, I said. Don't have to know. Just have to be here tomorrow. What if I can't? Then I'll knock louder. And we sat until the coffee was gone, until the sky started turning gray in the east. Hank stood, took both mugs. I'm making calls today, he said. Union guys, church folks, we'll figure something out. Don't. Too late. Already started yesterday. He walked back across the yard. His porch light stayed on. I sat on the swing as the sun came up. First time I'd seen sunrise in a week. The snow turned pink, then orange, then white again as the light spread. Inside, the kitchen was cold. The documents were still on the table. The casseroles were still in the fridge. I looked at Beth's photo on the mantel, the one from our wedding day. She was 22, laughing at something I'd said. I was 24, trying to look serious, but smiling anyway. Behind us in the photo, barely visible, baby Sarah in Beth's arms, 6 months old. Sarah didn't remember this picture being taken, didn't remember Beth holding her. Beth had made me promise, right before the end. Hospital bed in our living room, morphine drip clicking. Promise me you'll stay alive, Tom. Not just breathing, alive. I'd promised. But sitting here in the cold, looking at her picture, I wasn't sure I'd kept that promise. Hadn't been alive in a long time, just going through motions. Work, diner, TV, sleep, repeat. Diane didn't kill me. She just pointed out I was already gone. I sat at the table, put my head in my hands. That's when the knock came. Not Hank's truck sound. Different engine. I didn't move. The knock again. Then Hank's voice, not alone this time. Tom, you got company. Margaret Chen and a lawyer named Felicity Rourke. I lifted my head. You gonna make me use the spare key? I stood, legs stiff from sitting, walked to the door, opened it. Margaret Chen looked different outside the clinic. Smaller, somehow. Nervous. The woman beside her was younger, maybe mid-30s, dressed in a pantsuit that had seen better days. She carried a worn leather briefcase. Mr. Brennan, Margaret said, this is Felicity Rourke. She's an attorney. Hank pushed past me into the kitchen, started clearing the table without asking, papers into a pile, cold coffee cups into the sink. Got a pot going? He asked. I nodded toward the counter. Felicity set her briefcase on the cleared table, looked around the kitchen, the dim light, the stack of casseroles in the fridge, me in a 3-day-old flannel. Mr. Brennan, I specialize in medical ethics cases, she said. Margaret called me about your situation. There's no situation to specialize in. My ex-wife acted legally. 3 lawyers told me that already. She did act legally. Felicity pulled out a folder. Barely. What she did was technically within her rights as guardian, but there's a difference between legal and ethical. Hank set 4 mugs of coffee on the table. Margaret took one gratefully. Felicity wrapped her hands around hers like she needed the warmth. I can't reverse the transfer, Felicity said. The embryos are in Colorado. That's done. But I can challenge the motive behind the transfer. What good does that do? If we can prove your ex-wife acted from malice, that her intent was to cause you harm rather than act in the best interest of the embryos, the ethics board can intervene. They can recommend the transfer be suspended pending a custody review. I sat down. The chair felt strange after 3 days of mostly standing or lying on the couch. Suspended, I said. Not reversed. It's a process, but it gives you standing, gets you back in the conversation. But Margaret leaned forward. I saved the security footage from that day. The clinic keeps it for 30 days before it's erased. I made a copy. Footage of what? Your ex-wife. The hallway camera caught her after she signed the consent forms. Margaret's voice was quiet. Mr. Brennan, she checked her watch 3 times during the process. And after she signed the final form, she smiled. The kitchen was silent except for the coffee pot clicking off. She knew, I said. She knew you were in court, Felicity said. The timing wasn't coincidence. She scheduled the consent signing for the exact hour of your divorce hearing. That's premeditation. That's evidence of malicious intent. But I still can't. Mr. Brennan, Felicity's voice was firm. I need to ask something difficult. Your daughter, Sarah, would she testify? My stomach turned over. She's in rehab. Can't reach her until next week. Phone privileges. And your ex-wife has already talked to her, Margaret said quietly. I made some calls. Sarah thinks the embryos were adopted. I know. The coffee tasted like ash. I can't tell her the truth. Can't risk her sobriety. What if we could reach her? Margaret asked. What if she knew what really happened? I stopped. Tried to imagine Sarah learning the truth. I don't know what she'd do. Felicity pulled out more papers. The ethics board hearing would be in 3 weeks. If Sarah's willing to testify about what her mother told her, about the lies... My phone rang. Unknown number. We all stared at it. I answered. Dad? Everything stopped. Sarah? Yeah. Her voice was shaky. I got phone privileges early. Good behavior. The counselor said. She paused. Dad, Mom visited last week. She said the babies are with a family in Montana or somewhere. She said you knew, that you agreed. I looked at Margaret, at Felicity, at Hank standing by the counter. That's not true, sweetheart. Silence on the other end. Then what do you mean? The babies weren't adopted. They were transferred to Colorado. Your mom... I couldn't say it. Couldn't put it on Sarah. Dad, what happened? So I told her. The court giving custody to Diane, the transfer during my hearing, the Colorado facility where I had no standing, the lies Diane had told her. I could hear Sarah breathing, fast, like she was trying not to cry. She lied to me, Sarah whispered. She smiled and lied to my face. Sarah, listen. I'm 90 days sober, Dad, 90 days, and her voice broke. She looked me in the eye and lied. You don't have to do anything. Your recovery comes first. I'm testifying. Sarah, whatever you need, whatever this lawyer needs, I'm testifying. Her voice was stronger now, angry. I'm coming home next week. Early release for family crisis. I already talked to my counselor. You sure about this? I'm sure. A pause. Dad, I can do this. I need to do this. Okay. I love you. She hung up before I could say it back. I set the phone down. My hands were shaking. She's coming home, Isla, I said. She'll testify. Felicity was already making notes. That's good. That's very good. Her testimony about what her mother told her, combined with the timeline evidence. What timeline evidence? We need to establish that your ex-wife planned this, that she deliberately chose that date and time. Felicity looked at Margaret. Hospital records will show when she scheduled the appointment. If it aligns with the divorce hearing, I might have something better, Hank said from the counter. We all looked at him. Charlie Tibbs, you know Charlie, comes into the diner every morning. I nodded. Charlie was older than me by almost 10 years, retired farmer, drove a beat-up Ford that made mine look new. He was at the diner this morning, Hank said. Mentioned seeing Diane's car at the fertility clinic during that blizzard. Said it struck him odd, driving 30 miles in that weather. When was this? Felicity asked. January 12th, day of the storm. Hank poured himself more coffee. Charlie knows everyone's vehicles. Small town, and Diane's got that vanity plate. Can he testify to that? Charlie will tell the truth if you ask him. Won't like the attention, but he'll do it. Felicity was writing faster now. Timeline from hospital records, witness testimony about weather conditions in the defendant's vehicle, security footage showing satisfaction rather than reluctance, and the daughter's testimony about being deceived. She looked up. Mr. Brennan, this is enough. This is actually enough. Margaret was smiling. First time I'd seen her smile. There's one more thing, she said. I work at the clinic. I have access to the ethics board complaint process. If I file as a witness, as someone who observed the transaction, she looked at me, I could lose my job for this. Then don't. I should have spoken up 5 years ago. Different case. Different patient. I stayed quiet. Her jaw was set. I'm not staying quiet this time. Hank set his mug down. I'm making more calls. Union guys owe me favors. We'll get you the money for Felicity's retainer. Hank, I can't. You can. You will. He grabbed his coat. I'll be back tonight with an envelope. Don't argue. He left. The kitchen suddenly felt crowded with just the three of us. Felicity packed up her briefcase. I'll file the ethics complaint tomorrow. Start gathering hospital records. We'll need to interview Charlie Tibbs this week. What are my chances? I asked. She paused at the door. Legally? Not great. What your ex-wife did was within her authority, but ethically, she met my eyes. People hate cruelty dressed up as legality. We make them see the cruelty, we have a shot, and after they left, I sat at the clean table. For the first time in a week, I felt something besides emptiness. Not hope exactly, but maybe the space where hope could grow. The envelope showed up that night. Hank didn't knock, just left it wedged in the screen door. $4,200 in small bills. 10s and 20s, mostly. A few 5s, one crumpled 50 with a coffee stain. There was a note on top, Hank's handwriting. Union Hall, church basement, diner jar. Don't be stubborn. I sat on the couch and counted it twice. Pictured old men digging into their wallets. Widows pulling from grocery money. The guys I used to work with, retired on fixed incomes, same as me. They didn't have this to give. But they gave it anyway. Next morning, Felicity called. We're meeting Charlie Tibbs at the diner, 10 o'clock. Bring Hank if he's free. Mabel's Diner was the kind of place that hadn't changed since 1975. Red vinyl booths, black and white tile floor, coffee that could strip paint. The breakfast special was still $4.99. Charlie was in his usual spot at the counter when we walked in. He looked up from his eggs and hash browns, saw me, Hank, and a woman he didn't know carrying a briefcase. His face fell. "Aw, hell," he muttered. We slid into a booth. Jenny, the waitress, brought coffee without asking. She'd worked at Mabel's for 20 years, knew everyone's order by heart. "Charlie," Hank called over. "Come sit with us a minute." Charlie looked at his eggs like they might save him. Then he picked up his plate and shuffled over. 77 years old and moved like it. Hip replacement last year that didn't take quite right. "I don't want any trouble," he said, settling into the booth with a wince. "No trouble," Felicity said. "I just want to ask you about something you saw. January 12th, the day of the big snow." Charlie stabbed at his eggs. Figured that's what this was about. "And you mentioned to Jenny that you saw a Mercedes at the fertility clinic," Felicity said. "Out on Highway 52. "Might have." "Charlie." Hank's voice was gentle. "Just tell her what you told me." Charlie sighed, set down his fork. "I was coming back from the feed store, about 10:30 that morning. Roads were terrible. Black ice, visibility maybe 50 feet with the snow coming down. He took a sip of coffee. "Saw a car in the clinic parking lot. Mercedes. Vanity plate. Diane B. Struck me odd because nobody had business being out that far in that weather. Clinic's 30 miles from town. You don't drive 30 miles in a blizzard unless you got to." You're certain it was January 12th? Felicity asked. "Certain. Storm started that morning. Only lasted the one day. And I mentioned it to Jenny when I got here." He looked at the waitress. "Didn't I?" Jenny was refilling coffee at the next booth, but she'd been listening. "You did," said. "Diane Brennan's car is out at the fertility place. Crazy day to be driving." "What time did you get here?" Felicity was writing in a small notebook. 11, maybe. Little after. Charlie looked at me. "Tom, I don't want to cause you trouble, but if folks are asking, just tell the truth," I said. "That's all." "Truth is, it struck me odd. Still does." He pushed his eggs around. "Woman just got divorced, gets everything in the settlement, then drives 30 miles in a blizzard to a fertility clinic?" He shook his head. Didn't sit right. And Felicity closed her notebook. "Tibbs, would you be willing to testify to this at an ethics board hearing?" Charlie's face went gray. "Testify? Like in court?" "Not exactly court. More like a formal meeting, 5 board members. You just answer questions about what you saw." "I don't like being the center of attention." "I know, but you might be the only one who can place her there at that specific time in those specific conditions." Charlie looked at me, really looked, saw whatever was in my face. "Those your grandkids she's messing with?" "Yeah." He nodded slowly. "I'll do it, but I won't like it." "Fair enough," Felicity said. After the diner, we went to Felicity's office. A converted house on Oak Street, 2 rooms and a bathroom. The front room was stacked with file boxes, a desk buried under papers, a coffee maker that looked older than me. "Sorry about the mess," Felicity said. "Solo practice. Can't afford a secretary." She pulled up a video file on her laptop. "Margaret sent this over this morning. Security footage from the clinic." The video was black and white, grainy. A hallway with a clock in the corner showing 10:10 a.m. Diane walked into frame. Perfect posture. Hair smooth, even though she'd just driven through a blizzard. She stopped at a desk outside a closed door. A nurse handed her papers. Diane read them. Checked her watch. 10:15 a.m. The nurse said something. Diane nodded, signed the first paper. More papers, more signatures. Diane checked her watch again. 10:20 a.m. More signatures. Another watch check. 10:24 a.m. The nurse took the papers, said something. Diane smiled and nodded, adjusted her purse on her shoulder, started walking down the hallway toward the camera. And there, just before she reached the door, she smiled. Not a polite smile, not a nervous smile, a satisfied smile. The kind you make when something goes exactly according to plan. Then she was gone. Felicity paused the video. 3 watch checks during a 15-minute signing process. She was tracking time. She was making sure I was still in court, I said. Exactly. Felicity rewound to the smile, froze it. And this is what breaks her story. Her lawyer will argue she acted reluctantly, that the transfer was in the embryo's best interest. But this smile, she didn't need to finish. The smile said everything. Saturday morning, I drove to the rehab facility to pick up Sarah, 2 hours each way. The place was in the middle of nowhere, rolling hills, bare trees, one long driveway to a building that looked like a converted farmhouse. Sarah was waiting outside with a small duffel bag. She looked different, thinner. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, no makeup, but her eyes were clear. She got in the truck. Set the duffel between us like a barrier. We drove in silence for the first 20 minutes, radio off, Just the sound of the engine and the road. House looks the same, she said when I turned onto our street. Most of the furniture's gone? Divorce settlement? I'm sorry. Nothing for you to be sorry about. I parked in the driveway. We sat there for a minute. Your old room is empty, I said. I can set up the guest room. It's okay, Dad. I don't need much. Inside, she looked around. The empty living room. The kitchen table with legal papers still in a pile. The fridge with its casseroles. You haven't been eating, she said. Haven't been hungry. She opened the fridge, started pulling out casseroles. Well, we're eating tonight, and you're going to tell me everything, the whole story. We ate tuna noodle casserole at the kitchen table. Sarah had 2 helpings. I managed one. Tell me about the hearing, she said. What do I have to do? Just tell the truth. What your mother told you, what you believed. I can do that. She pushed food around her plate. Dad, I'm scared. Of what? Of seeing her, of... She pulled something out of her pocket, a bronze coin. This is my 90-day chip from the program. I keep touching it to remind myself I can do hard things. I looked at the chip. It caught the overhead light. You walked away from pills, what I said. After 6 years, I couldn't walk away from a bad marriage for 40. You're stronger than I ever was. Oh, that's not true. It is. I met her eyes. Your mother looked at me for decades, and I never saw what was underneath. You're 3 months sober, and you see everything clearly. She put the chip back in her pocket. When's the hearing? 2 weeks, March 1st. I'll be ready. That night, I heard her moving around in the guest room, setting up the air mattress Hank had lent us, unpacking her duffel, small sounds of someone settling in. For the first time in a month, the house didn't feel empty. Sunday, we went to church. I hadn't been since the divorce. Couldn't face the looks, the whispers, the pity. But Sarah wanted to go, so we went. People stared. Of course they did. Tom Brennan and his addict daughter, both crawling back to Jesus after making messes of their lives. We sat in the back pew. The hymn was Amazing Grace. Sarah's voice was thin but steady beside mine. I hadn't sung in church since Beth died. Couldn't remember why I stopped. After the service, the pastor shook our hands. Good to see you both. 3 women from the Bible study came over, the ones who'd left casseroles. Tom, we're praying for you, one of them said. Then to Sarah, and you, dear, so brave. Sarah's hand went to her pocket, the chip. Thank you, she said. Monday morning, Felicity called. Ethics Board hearing is scheduled, March 1st, 2 p.m., Medical Complex Conference Room. We have 4 witnesses, Margaret, Charlie, you and Sarah. What about Diane? She'll be there. Her lawyer already filed a response. They're arguing she acted within legal authority and that her personal feelings toward you are irrelevant. What are our chances? Felicity paused. Honestly, 50-50, maybe worse. The board can't override legal custody decisions. Best they can do is recommend the transfer be suspended for ethical review. But Tom, her voice softened. People on these boards, they've seen a lot. They know the difference between following the law and using it as a weapon. So we make them see. Yeah, we make them see. That night, Sarah and I sat at the kitchen table, going over her testimony. Felicity had sent questions the board might ask. They'll ask what your mother told you. Felicity had written, just tell the truth. Don't embellish. Don't editorialize. Just state what was said. Sarah practiced. She told me the babies had been placed with a good family. She said it was an adoption. How did that make you feel? I asked, reading from Felicity's list. Relieved. Sarah's voice wavered. I thought they'd be safe. I thought... She stopped, started again. I thought at least I did one thing right. At least they'd have a chance. And when you learned the truth? Her jaw tightened. I felt betrayed and angry, and she looked at me. Dad, what if I freeze up there? What if I can't get the words out? Then touch your chip. Remember, you can do hard things. What if this wrecks my sobriety? What if I relapse after? I reached across the table, stopped just short of her hand, scared to touch her like she might break. She reached the rest of the way, took my hand. You won't, I said. How do you know? Because you're here, because you came home, because you're choosing to stand up. I squeezed her hand. That's not relapse behavior, that's recovery. We sat like that for a long minute, her hand in mine, both of us scared but trying. Dad? Yeah. When did you start believing I could do hard things? I thought about it. About 3 months ago, I thought Sarah was lost forever, thought she'd chosen pills over everything. About 5 minutes ago, I said honestly, when you asked that question. She laughed, almost crying but laughing too. We're both figuring this out, aren't we? Yeah, we are. Outside, the sun was going down, light fading to purple, then dark. But inside, the kitchen was warm. The coffee pot was on. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I wasn't sitting alone. The medical complex conference room smelled like burnt coffee and air conditioning set too cold, beige walls, long table with water pitchers nobody touched, 5 chairs on one side for the ethics board, chairs scattered on the other side for everyone else. Sarah and I got there early, sat in the back corner. Her leg bounced under the table. Every few minutes, her hand went to her pocket. The chip. You okay? I asked. No, but I'll do it anyway. Felicity arrived with Margaret, both of them carrying folders, looking professional. Felicity wore the same pantsuit from before. Margaret had on a blue dress, nervous energy coming off her in waves. Board members should be here any minute, Felicity said. Then we'll start. Charlie came in next. Wore a suit that looked like it hadn't been out of the closet since his wife's funeral. Kept tugging at his collar. Hank was with him, steady presence. Doing okay, Charlie? Hank asked. Rather be anywhere else. I know. Appreciate you being here. The board members filed in. 3 women, 2 men, all in business clothes, faces that gave nothing away. They took their seats, arranged papers, whispered to each other. Then the door opened again. Diane walked in like she owned the room, hair perfect, expensive coat. Her lawyer beside her, tall man in a suit that probably cost more than my truck. They sat on the opposite side, Diane's back straight, her face calm. She glanced at Sarah once, just once. Sarah looked away. The board chair, woman in her 50s with reading glasses, cleared her throat. We're here to review a complaint filed by Margaret Chen regarding the embryo transfer consent process for materials previously stored at Indiana Fertility Solutions. Ms. Chen alleges the transfer was conducted in an ethically questionable manner. Diane's lawyer stood. Chairwoman, my client acted within her legal authority as court-appointed guardian. Her personal motivations are irrelevant to... Will determine relevance, counselor. Please sit. He sat. Ms. Chen, you filed the complaint. Please state your concerns. Margaret stood. Her hands shook slightly, but her voice was steady. I'm a patient advocate at the clinic. I've worked there 15 years. On January 12th, I observed Diane Brennan complete consent forms for embryo transfer. She paused. The timeline concerns me. Mrs. Brennan scheduled the appointment for 10 a.m. Her ex-husband had a court hearing that same day at the same time, 40 miles away. That's not unusual, Diane's lawyer said. People schedule appointments when they're available. I'm not finished. Margaret's voice got stronger. I also observed Mrs. Brennan check her watch repeatedly during the signing process, 3 times in 15 minutes. And after completing the forms, I saw her smile. Not relief, satisfaction. You're interpreting facial expressions, the lawyer said. I have video evidence, Margaret said quietly. Security footage from the hallway. The room went still. The board chair leaned forward. You have footage? I do. I saved it before the 30-day deletion cycle. The clinic's legal, but... Margaret looked at Diane. I couldn't let it disappear. Diane's face stayed blank, but her lawyer's jaw tightened. We'll review the footage, the chair said. But first, other witnesses. Mr. Tibbs? Charlie stood slowly, walked to the front like a man heading to the gallows. Mr. Tibbs, you witnessed something relevant to this case? Yes, ma'am. Charlie pulled at his collar. January 12th, I was driving back from the feed store, about 10:30 in the morning. Big storm that day. Roads were terrible. And? Saw a Mercedes in the fertility clinic parking lot. Vanity plate, Diane B. Struck me odd because nobody had business being out in that weather, 30 miles from town. Blizzard conditions. You're certain of the date? Yes, ma'am. Only storm we had all month. And I mentioned it to Jenny, the waitress at Mabel's, soon as I got to town. And one of the board members, a man in his 60s, spoke up. Why did it strike you as odd? Because you don't drive 30 miles in a blizzard unless you have to. And Mrs. Brennan had just gotten divorced. Got everything in the settlement. Didn't make sense she'd risk those roads for a routine appointment. Charlie sat down, looking relieved it was over. The board chair made notes. Ms. Brennan, Sarah Brennan, you're next. Sarah stood, her legs shook. She walked to the front, hand in her pocket. Ms. Brennan, you're the biological mother of the embryos in question. Yes. And you signed medical guardianship to your mother during a previous hospitalization? Yes. 3 years ago, I had a problem. With pills, Sarah's voice was thin but clear. I was in bad shape. I signed papers I probably shouldn't have. Your mother visited you recently at Mountain View Recovery Center? Yes, February 5th. What did she tell you about the embryos? Sarah took a breath, touched her pocket. She said they'd been placed with a good family. She said it was an adoption, that they'd be safe. How did that make you feel? Relieved. Sarah's voice cracked. I thought at least I did something right. At least my kids would have a chance. And when did you learn the truth? 2 weeks ago, my father called, told me they weren't adopted. They were transferred to Colorado, that my mother destroyed any chance of us, having custody. The board chair leaned forward. She told you it was an adoption? Yes, she smiled when she said it. Said, they're with a good family now, you can let go. Diane's lawyer stood. The witness is clearly biased. Sit down, the chair said sharply. We'll hear her testimony. Sarah looked at her mother for the first time. You lied to my face. While I was trying to get sober. You looked at me and lied. Diane's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Sarah's voice got stronger. I'm 90 days sober, first time in 6 years, and I'm choosing my father. I'm choosing the truth. She walked back to her seat. I wanted to squeeze her shoulder, tell her she did good, but touching felt like too much, so I just nodded. She nodded back. The board chair looked at Felicity. Counselor, you mentioned video evidence? Felicity pulled out a laptop, set it on the table, facing the board. Security footage from January 12th, 10:10 to 10:45 a.m. She hit play. The footage showed everything Margaret had described. Diane at the desk, the papers, the watch checks. 10:15, 10:20, 10:24. Each one deliberate, each one calculated, then the final signature. The nurse saying something, Diane adjusting her purse, and the smile. Small, satisfied, gone in a second. But caught on camera. The board members watched in silence. When it ended, the room stayed quiet. Finally, the chair spoke. Miss Brennan, you checked your watch 3 times during a 15-minute signing process. Why? Diane's lawyer started to stand. Diane put her hand on his arm, stood herself. I had another appointment. At what time? I don't recall. Your ex-husband was in court at 10 a.m. that day. Divorce hearing. Were you aware of that? I may have known. You may have known. The chair's voice was flat. Mrs. Brennan, let me ask directly. Was this decision made in the best interest of the embryos, or to prevent your ex-husband from having access to them? Diane's composure cracked, just a little. Her jaw tightened. My ex-husband abandoned our daughter. He failed as a father. He doesn't deserve... She stopped, caught herself. But it was too late. The room absorbed her words. He doesn't deserve, not the embryos are better off, not this was the right medical decision. He doesn't deserve. One of the board members, a younger woman, spoke quietly. So this was punitive. I exercised my legal authority? That's not what I asked. Diane sat down. Her lawyer leaned in, whispered urgently. She shook her head. The board chair looked at the other members. Some kind of silent communication passed between them. We need time to deliberate. We'll issue findings within 2 weeks. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel sound was just a pen clicking, but it felt final. Everyone stood. Diane and her lawyer left first, not looking at anyone. Her heels echoed in the hallway. Sarah and I walked out together, Hank and Charlie behind us. Felicity and Margaret gathering papers. In the hallway, Diane was waiting by the elevator. Her lawyer was on his phone, voice low and urgent. Sarah stopped. I stopped beside her. Diane turned, saw us. You have no idea what you've done, she said to Sarah. I know exactly what I've done, Mom. I chose him. You chose an old man with nothing. No house, no money, no... He's my father, Sarah said. And he didn't lie to me. The elevator opened. Diane stepped in, turned to face us as the doors closed. For just a second, her mask fell completely. And what was underneath wasn't anger, it was fear. The doors closed. Sarah's hand found mine, squeezed once. We walked out to the parking lot in silence. The March air was cold but not bitter, snow melting in the gutters, mud in the flower beds. What happens now? Sarah asked. We wait, I said. 2 weeks. And if they rule against us, then we figure out what's next. She nodded, got in the truck. I looked back at the building, gray concrete and glass, where truth had been spoken and lies had cracked open. 2 weeks. We'd made them see. Now we'd find out if seeing was enough. The first 3 days were the worst. Every time the phone rang, my chest tightened. Every time it wasn't Felicity with news, I deflated a little more. Sarah handled it better than me. Or maybe she just hid it better. She kept busy, cleaned out closets that didn't need cleaning, organized the kitchen cabinets, made grocery lists and dinner plans like we were a normal family living a normal life. Wednesday morning, she made pancakes. I came into the kitchen and found her at the stove, spatula in hand, coffee already poured. Couldn't sleep, she said. Figured I'd make breakfast. We ate at the table. The same table covered in legal papers a month ago, Now it was clear except for 2 plates, 2 coffee mugs, and a small vase Sarah had filled with fake flowers from the dollar store. "Those are nice," I said, nodding at the flowers. "They're plastic." "Still nice." She smiled a little. Pushed pancake around her plate. "Dad, what if they rule against us?" "Then we figure out what's next. But there might not be a next. If the board says what Mom did was fine, then we'll know we tried." We spoke up. That counts for something. "Does it?" I didn't have an answer. Thursday, we went to the diner. First time since the hearing, I wasn't sure I wanted to face people. Wasn't sure what they'd say. But Sarah wanted to go. So we went. Jenny was working. She brought coffee before we sat down. "How'd it go?" she asked quietly. "Don't know yet." Waiting on the board. "Charlie said you both did real good." At the counter, Charlie raised his coffee mug in our direction. Didn't say anything, didn't need to, but not everyone was friendly. An older woman, Margaret Phillips, went to our church, stopped by our booth on her way out. "Tom, I heard what happened at that hearing, bringing your daughter into it." She shook her head. "That was harsh." Sarah's hand went to her pocket. "She chose to come," I said evenly. "Still, seems like you're dragging this out. Diane had legal custody. She made a choice. Maybe it's time to let it go." Hank's voice came from the booth behind us. "Margaret, maybe it's time for you to let it go and mind your own business." She huffed and left. Hank slid into our booth, coffee in hand. "Don't listen to her. She's been bitter since her husband left her in '03. Some people think I should have just accepted it," I said. "Some people are idiots." Hank took a sip of coffee. "You stood up. That's what matters." But the exchange stuck with me. All day, I kept hearing Margaret Phillips' voice. Time to let it go. Maybe she was right. Maybe dragging this out was selfish. Maybe I was making things harder for Sarah, risking her sobriety for my own pride. That night, I couldn't sleep. Got up at 2 a.m., sat on the porch. March cold, still had teeth. But the air smelled different, like earth waking up. Sarah came out 10 minutes later, 2 mugs of coffee. "Couldn't sleep either," she said, handing me a mug. We sat on the swing. The chains creaked. "What Mrs. Phillips said at the diner," Sarah started. "She's wrong. Maybe she's not. Dad, look at me." I looked. "I chose this. Not you, me. I chose to testify because Mom lied to me, because she manipulated both of us, and because," her voice caught, "because I wanted my kids to know their grandfather tried. Even if we lose? Especially if we lose." She took a sip of coffee. "Trying matters. Standing up matters. I learned that in recovery. You don't get clean because you know it'll work. You do it because not trying means you're already dead." We sat there until the sky started turning gray. "Dad? Yeah? Thank you for not giving up on me. When I was..." She stopped, started again. "You could have walked away, could have written me off, but you didn't. You're my daughter. And those twins are your grandkids. That's why we don't let go." The second week was somehow longer than the first. Spring was trying to show up. Crocuses pushing through the mud in the front yard, purple and white. Sarah kept pointing them out. "Look, more came up." I looked. Tiny flowers, barely visible. Stubborn little things. Felicity called on day 9. My heart stopped. "No news yet," she said quickly. "Just checking in. The board requested additional documentation. Medical records from the Colorado facility. That's actually good." "How is that good?" "It means they're being thorough. They're not rubber stamping Diane's version. Or they're building a case for why she was right." "Tom," Felicity's voice was gentle, "I know waiting is hard, but we did everything we could. The rest is up to them." After she hung up, I sat at the table staring at my phone. Sarah was in the living room on the air mattress, reading a recovery book. She looked up. "Felicity? Board requested more records. That's good, right?" "Maybe." She came and sat beside me. We didn't talk. Just sat there, as the afternoon light moved across the floor. Sunday, we went to church again. Second week in a row, people were starting to treat us normal. Not like disasters walking. Just Tom and Sarah Brennan sitting in the back pew. The sermon was about persistence. The parable of the widow and the judge. How she kept asking for justice until the judge gave in just to shut her up. "Sometimes," the pastor said, "righteousness means being stubborn." Sarah glanced at me, almost smiled. After the service, one of the Bible study ladies, Carol, the one who'd brought the tuna casserole, pulled me aside. "Tom, we've been praying. Whatever the board decides, you did the right thing. Don't feel like the right thing. Rarely does, in the middle of it." She squeezed my arm. "But standing up for family, that's always right." Day 14, Friday morning, 2 weeks exactly since the hearing. The phone rang at 9:47 a.m. Same time, The first call had come, the one that started everything. Felicity's number, I answered. Sarah appeared in the doorway holding her coffee mug. Tom, the board issued their findings. You need to come to my office. Both of you. Just tell me. In person. This kind of thing, she paused. Just come, 1 hour. She hung up. Sarah set down her mug. What did she say? She wants us at her office. Is that good or bad? Don't know. We got ready in silence. Sarah changed her shirt 3 times. I couldn't get my hands to stop shaking long enough to button my flannel. Finally just left it over a t-shirt. The drive to Felicity's office was 20 minutes. Neither of us spoke. Radio off. Just the sound of the engine and our breathing. Sarah's hand kept going to her pocket. The chip. We pulled into the parking lot. Sat there for a minute. Neither of us moving to get out. Whatever happens, I said. I know. No, listen, whatever happens, we're okay. You and me. We're okay. She nodded. Tears in her eyes, but not falling. Ready? I asked. No, but we're doing it anyway. And we walked to the building together, each step feeling like it might be towards something good or something terrible. No way to know until we got inside. Felicity's office door was open. She was standing behind her desk. Documents spread out in front of her. Her face was neutral, impossible to read. Sit down, she said. Both of you. We sat. Felicity picked up the top document. Official letterhead. Ethics Board seal at the top. She looked at us, then down at the paper, and started to read. Felicity's voice was steady, professional, but I could hear something underneath. Relief, maybe. After reviewing all evidence presented, including security footage, witness testimony, and timeline documentation, this board finds that the embryo transfer consent process conducted on January 12th raises significant ethical concerns. Sarah's hand found mine under the table. Specifically, the timing of the consent signing, conducted during the ex-husband's court hearing 40 miles away, suggests premeditation to exclude said party from the decision-making process. The repeated time checks documented on security footage support this conclusion. Felicity looked up. They saw it. They saw what she did. Keep reading, I said. Furthermore, security footage reveals behavior inconsistent with reluctant compliance or neutral decision-making. The subject's demeanor suggests satisfaction rather than the difficult emotional state typically associated with such decisions. That smile. They'd seen that smile. The testimony of Sarah Brennan regarding false information provided by her mother adds additional concern regarding the guardian's motives and truthfulness. Sarah squeezed my hand tighter. While this board cannot reverse the legal custody decision made by the court, we find the transfer was conducted under ethically questionable circumstances. We recommend immediate suspension of the transfer pending a full custody review. Furthermore, we recommend the court reconsider the guardianship arrangement given evidence of potential malicious intent rather than best interest of the embryonic material. Felicity set the paper down. The embryos stay in the Colorado facility, but custody reverts to court review. Diane lost guardianship, and Sarah, she looked at my daughter. You can petition for custody, with your father as co-guardian. The room was silent, except for the sound of Sarah crying. Not loud, just tears running down her face. We didn't lose, she whispered. You didn't win everything, Felicity said gently. The embryos are still in Colorado. There's no guarantee what happens next, but you have standing now. You exist in their future. I couldn't speak. My throat was too tight. There's a custody hearing in 3 weeks, Felicity continued. I'll file Sarah's petition today. Given the ethics board findings and your sobriety record, I think the court will grant it. Sarah wiped her eyes. And then what? Then you decide. Surrogacy, adoption, whatever you choose. But you choose, not Diane. We sat there, the weight of the last 2 months settling over us. Not gone, just lighter. Tom? Felicity's voice was soft. You okay? Yeah. My voice came out rough. Yeah, I'm okay. We left her office in a daze, got in the truck, sat there. We should call Hank, Sarah said, and Margaret. They'll want to know. In a minute, we sat in silence. The sun coming through the windshield, warm, spring arriving whether we were ready or not. Dad? Yeah? Thank you. For what? For not giving up, for fighting. She looked at me. For teaching me that silence doesn't mean surrender. I started the truck. 3 weeks later, we were back in court. Different room this time, family court. Smaller, less formal. The judge was a woman in her 60s. She'd reviewed the ethics board findings, reviewed Sarah's sobriety records from the rehab facility, reviewed my background. Miss Brennan, the judge said, you understand the responsibility of guardianship? Sarah stood. Yes, Your Honor. And my father will help me. Mr. Brennan, you'll serve as co-guardian? I stood. If the court allows it, yes. The judge made notes, flipped through papers. The courtroom was quiet, except for the scratch of her pen. Given the ethics board findings regarding the previous guardian's conduct, and given Ms. Brennan's demonstrated progress in recovery, I'm granting the petition. She looked at us over her reading glasses. The embryos remain at the Colorado facility pending further decisions. But guardianship transfers to Sarah Brennan, with Thomas Brennan as co-guardian. Any decisions regarding surrogacy, adoption, or other disposition will require agreement from both parties. The gavel came down. Real one this time. We stood. Sarah was crying again. I put my arm around her shoulders. First time I'd done that in years. She leaned into me. Outside the courthouse, the March air had lost its bite. Snow was gone, except for dirty piles in the shadows, mud everywhere. But in the courthouse flower beds, crocuses had pushed through. Purple and white, like the ones in our yard. What now? Sarah asked. Now we figure out the next steps. Together. Should we go to the clinic? Talk about options? I looked at the crocuses, small, stubborn, alive, despite everything trying to kill them. Yeah, I said. Let's go. And a week later, we drove to the fertility clinic. Same building where this had all started. Same parking lot where I'd run through the snow 2 months ago. But different now. Everything was different. Sarah was nervous. I could tell by the way she kept adjusting her seatbelt, her hand going to her pocket. We don't have to decide anything today, I said. I know, but I want to hear what they say. Want to know what's possible. We walked in together. The receptionist, different one this time, checked us in, led us to a counseling office instead of the waiting room. The surrogacy counselor was a woman named Beth. Not my Beth, but the name still hit me in the chest. Mr. Brennan, Ms. Brennan, thank you for coming in. She had folders spread on her desk. I understand you have 2 embryos in storage at our Colorado partner facility. Let's talk about your options. She walked us through it. Surrogacy carriers. Costs, $30,000 to $40,000 per attempt. Success rates, timeline, could be a year or more. Medical considerations. My head spun with numbers and procedures and possibilities. Sarah asked questions, good ones, about the carrier screening process, about what happens if the first attempt fails, about what legal protections we'd have. The counselor answered patiently, no pressure, no judgment, just information. You don't need to decide today, she said finally. This is a big decision. Take your time, talk it through. We left with pamphlets and information packets and heads full of options we never thought we'd have. In the parking lot, Sarah stopped. Dad, I can't afford $30,000. We'll figure it out. How? I didn't have an answer, but I had something else. We have time now. That's more than we had 2 months ago. She nodded, looked back at the building. It's not what I thought it would be. The win, I mean. Thought I'd feel more happy. What do you feel? Overwhelmed and grateful and scared? She looked at me. Is that normal? I reckon it is. We got in the truck. As I pulled out of the parking lot, Sarah pointed. Look. At the edge of the parking lot, in a muddy flower bed, nobody had tended in months. Crocuses were growing, purple against brown earth, small and stubborn and alive. Those keep showing up, Sarah said. Yeah, they do. We drove home in comfortable silence, the kind that didn't need filling. 2 weeks later, I'm sitting on the porch swing at dusk, coffee in my hand. Sarah's truck in the driveway. She's staying through the summer at least, maybe longer. The crocuses in the front yard have multiplied, more every day. Not dramatic, just persistent. Inside, Sarah's making dinner. I can hear her moving around the kitchen. Smell something on the stove. Smells like her grandmother's pot roast recipe. Beth's recipe. I think about the last 3 months. What I lost, what I gained, what's still uncertain. Lost the house Diane got in the settlement. Lost my savings. Lost the easy way forward where I could have just accepted it all and disappeared quietly. Gained my daughter back. Gained standing in my grandchildren's future, whatever that looks like. Gained proof that I still exist, still matter. Got something smaller than what I wanted. Wanted to hold those babies. Watch them grow up in this house. Wanted Beth back. Wanted Sarah without the addiction years between us. Wanted Diane to be someone she wasn't. Got standing instead. Got to be part of the decision. Got to matter in the eyes of the law and in my daughter's life. Some victories don't make any sound. This one barely whispers, but it's real. Hank's porch light comes on next door, same as every night. Keeping watch, being present, showing up, that's what this whole thing taught me, I reckon. Showing up matters, speaking up matters, even when you're scared, even when the odds are long, even when people tell you to let it go. Sarah comes to the door. Dinner's ready. Be right there. She goes back inside, screen door creaking the way it has for 30 years. I look at the crocuses one more time. They didn't bloom because the weather was perfect. Didn't bloom because someone took special care of them. They bloomed because that's what they do. Push through frozen ground. Show up. Persist. I'm like those flowers now, diminished but present. Not defeated. Not gone. Still here. I stand. Knees creak a little. Getting old. But getting old beats the alternative. Inside, the kitchen is warm. The table is set for two. Sarah pours coffee without asking. Sets a mug at my place. We eat Beth's pot roast recipe. It's almost right. Not quite. Sarah forgot the time. But close enough. Good enough. After dinner, we sit with our coffee. The house quiet around us. Dad, Sarah says, I've been thinking about the surrogacy, the cost. We'll figure it out. I know, but I was thinking, what if they don't make it? What if we go through all this and the embryos don't survive the process? Then we tried. That's more than most people get to do. She nods, touches her pocket, still carrying that chip. 120 days now, 4 months. Mom called me today, she says quietly. I set down my coffee. What did she want? To explain, to tell me her side. Sarah looks at me. I didn't answer, but I listened to the voicemail. She said she was trying to protect me, that you'd abandoned us when I needed you. What did you think? I thought she's still lying. Maybe to me, maybe to herself. Sarah takes a sip of coffee. But I also thought, she's alone now, really alone. And that's sad. She chose that. I know, but it's still sad. We sit with that for a minute. You're a better person than me, I finally say. No, I'm just learning to see people clearly, including her, including you. She meets my eyes. You're not perfect, Dad. You were gone a lot when I was growing up. You didn't know how to talk about feelings. You let Mom steamroll you for 40 years. I know. But you showed up when it counted. You fought for me, for us. Her voice gets thick. That's what I'll remember. The sun's completely down now, dark outside. But the kitchen is bright, warm. I think about Beth's promise, the one I made to stay alive, not just breathing, alive. I think I'm finally keeping it. Sarah takes our plates to the sink, starts washing. I dry. Same rhythm Beth and I had for 40 years. Wash, dry, put away. Small routine that means home. Outside, the crocuses are invisible in the dark, but I know they're there. Still growing, still showing up. Tomorrow, they'll be there again, and the day after that. That's all any of us can do. Show up, persist. Push through the frozen ground and bloom anyway. Not because it's guaranteed to work, but because not trying means you're already gone. And I'm still here. We're still here. That's enough.